So I'm going to call this meeting. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the School Committee Program Subcommittee to order. Today is Thursday, April 13th. We are at Gloucester High School at 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road. Consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time. And there is no participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the Gloucester School Committee's Program Subcommittee during this and future meetings will be by roll call vote. At this meeting, there is no public comment, therefore instructions on how to speak to this subcommittee virtually are not issued. If you would like to address the Gloucester School Committee, please comment at our regularly scheduled full school committee meetings. Today we have Amy Pasquarello, Assistant Superintendent of Gloucester Public Schools, Bill Melvin, School Committee Member, Keith Minio, School Committee Member, and myself, Laura Wiesen, School Committee Member. All right, so we will begin with School Choice Policy File JFBB, which was in our packets. Amy, do you want to talk about this?
I have in the presentation, I can show it. We also have it in your packets. So we have the current language, which on your packets was crossed out for 0.7, and we have some proposed language. So the school choice, this is for students coming to Gloucester from outside of Gloucester. This is not inter-choice, this is coming from outside of Gloucester. So the policy would remain the same, except we're talking about specifically number 7, which currently says generally applications for school choice must be submitted prior to the beginning of the school year for which a student is seeking admission. A late application may be accepted in the discretion of the school administration, but applications will not be accepted after the first quarter of the school year. So there's been some proposed language, and we can talk about it and do a little wordsmithing if we need to. But this is the proposed new language. Generally, applications for school choice must be submitted prior to the beginning of the school year for which a student is seeking admission. A late application may be accepted at the discretion of school administration, but applications outside of the Gloucester Public School District will not be accepted after the first term has ended. And here's where the changes. Gloucester Public School students moving out of the district after January 31st will be given priority to remain in the Gloucester Public Schools for the remainder of the school year, provided, consistent with this policy, there are no safety concerns, attendance issues, or a record of serious disciplinary issues. And that part is taken from point 4 of the same policy.
Point 4.
Up above.
Yeah.
Above, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
What's any reflections on the idea of attendance concerns? What would that be about?
So typically a student who, and it says in point 4,
Yeah, I was reading.
that an application would be denied if there are safety concerns, attendance concerns, or a record of serious discipline for a non-resident. So a student has a record of an attendance challenge would not be granted a school choice.
But that's not, it's not a definitive number. It's just if there's a record.
If there's a record.
Yeah.
The reasoning I think behind it is school choice, we do not provide transportation. So if they're coming to us from Beverly or Rockford or Manchester, whatever, parents need to provide transportation to do that outside of the district. And if somebody already has an attendance issue, it's an even greater challenge.
So if they have an attendance issue at their current school and
Yes.
want a choice into our school.
Right.
That could be a reason
It could be a reason. It
that they're
doesn't have
denied.
to be.
Right.
Right.
And legally, we're not obligated to, we're only obligated to educate our own
Students,
residents.
yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was my list. I'm
Yes.
like, we kind of have to teach kids, but.
We do.
Yeah,
We have to
yeah.
teach Gloucester students, absolutely.
Right.
But for school
Just wanna make
choice,
sure I understood
we
that
can
right.
have these parameters, yes.
Yeah,
Who is proposing this new language? Is this coming from you as the assistant superintendent? Or the-
Well, it was brought up from the school committee to relook at this language, right?
Right.
Laura, you brought it up.
Right.
Yep.
And I met with the superintendent and Principal James Cook and Principal Lynn Beebe
Yeah.
to go over this particular language, and these were the recommendations that they had proposed.
Because those are the two schools that it mostly affects.
Yes.
High school and middle school.
Yeah.
This was referred to the committee because of the issue of students leaving, perhaps moving after January 31st, wanting to stay in their home school
Finish the school year.
and finish the school year.
Mhm.
And
They
we
weren't being allowed to.
it's not that they weren't being allowed to. I think they probably were, but there wasn't a policy for that. So this was a way.
Policy
I-
didn't support the option of them staying.
Right.
I think there were a few situations where they were told they were not allowed to.
Okay, so that's why we want to update the policy
Yeah.
to reflect the desire if
Right.
all these, these categories are met,
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
allow these students to stay
Yeah.
in their school.
The other situation I heard about was that some kids would say like move from one zone to another within our district and be told that like you have to apply to remain in the district that they're
But this
moving
is
to.
all-
So that's an intra
Yes.
choice.
Yeah.
This is a.
That was allowed already, I think, right? Or was it?
Well, that's a different policy.
Yeah.
That's not this
This
policy.
is just for
Yeah.
out of district.
Right.
Out of district.
They're
Right.
moving out of the district, this.
Right, they moved to Beverly, but they want to stay and finish off the year
Right.
at Gloucester High.
And I want to be clear, and I don't want to set a precedent that we are changing policy because of one or two cases, right? But one or two cases might have shed light
Yeah.
on the fact that the policy wasn't clear enough for
Right.
for us to have a definitive. So this is not in reaction because of one or two students. This is
Mhm.
showing us that the policy was not written clearly enough for us to have a definitive answer. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Well, let me ask you this, Amy. With regards to general application for school choice must be submitted prior to the beginning of the school year. So basically, someone could apply right up until the beginning of the school year. Is that what that's saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So when a student applies for school choice from another district,
Yeah.
it's not automatic that we accept. We need to make sure that there's room,
That there's a spot.
right? There's a spot for them.
Yeah.
And that they aren't disqualified because of other things in this policy, the attendance or
Yeah.
disciplinary or those kind of things, a record. And if they match, then, and if there's space, we can accept them into our
Okay.
program.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that this language gives us what the goal is. So applications from outside the Gloucester Public School District will not be accepted after the first term. So that's definitive, yes. Gloucester Public School students moving out of the district after January 3rd will be given priority to remain in their Gloucester Public School for the remainder of the school year. So from an administration perspective, that gives us enough policy, that gives us clear enough policy so that those students will have the ability to stay.
Yes.
Okay.
Why the third? What if a kid said, or family said, Gloucester Public School students moving out of the districts after the 31st will be given priority. So I guess that January 31st doesn't. Someone could move out of the district in December.
But that's still the first.
No, so we didn't use terms because elementary has 3 terms.
Yeah.
Right? Middle and high has quarters or semesters.
Yeah.
Right? So the January 31st date was chosen as a midpoint. The thought of a student moving in November or December, transition wise, if you move to Beverly or Rockport or wherever, that gives you a half a year to transition and acclimate into a new school system.
I see.
Versus if you've already done half the year, approximately half the
Yeah.
year, then you might as well, if you're able to, finish the year
Yeah.
with your peers that you're currently with and then make the transition over
Yeah.
the summer.
If
That's
you-
not to say a parent might decide to move them that day. I mean, they always have that right.
Yeah, right.
But we do use the term language because we say applications from outside the Gloucester Public School District will not be accepted after the first term has ended.
Right, so that would be different dates for like the middle and high school ends at one point, Elementary doesn't end until December, so it's a longer window, but
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, it seems to cover it pretty well. When I first read it, I thought, oh, it's kind of vague, but it needs to be I'm not saying it's vague. It says what it needs to say. I think.
Yeah. The only question is, is it clear that if the student stayed through the rest of the year, that they would still have to apply for school choice for the next year if they wanted to say?
Yeah, where do we say
Do
that?
we need that to be clear?
We don't say
or
that.
Is that assumed because it says priority will be given for their to remain in Gloucester schools for the remainder of the school year?
Right.
Like, is that enough? And I'm just asking.
to me, that's enough because they are then an out-of-district student.
Right.
After that point, they've finished that school year, which they had a special dispensation for. And from that point, they are then a Manchester resident or a Rockport resident or a Beverly resident, and they are subject to the same rules as other students. That's my read.
Let me be proper and raise my hand. I almost forgot my question. So, do out-of-district students in our district, sorry, you know what I mean, non-residents or whatever you want to call it, do they have to reapply every year if they want to be placed in Gloucester's school district?
No.
So
they're
once they've been placed,
they're able to stay here through graduation unless there are attendance concerns, disciplinary concerns, or what was the third? A serious record of
Safety concerns.
safety concerns.
so is that unique to other district students?
No, I
I mean,
think that's fairly common.
You mean that out-of-district students
well,
can
I mean,
stay?
our resident students, Gloucester residents don't have this sort of exclusionary, like, okay, you missed like 10, 11
Gloucester
days.
students are Gloucester students and we are obligated to educate them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Attendance wise, disciplinary wise, we are obligated to educate.
But we have the right to say for a non-resident student, say, you missed 15 days of school.
We probably wouldn't do it for 15, but yes,
Yeah.
that student has a right to go to school in their hometown though.
Sure.
We're not taking away the
Yeah,
right
yeah,
for education,
yeah.
it's just the choicing into here.
Yeah. So with this language here, I'm just trying to get my head around, like, okay, we're saying for the end of the school year. So they've effectively choiced in, so shouldn't they be able to graduate with?
We're creating a separate category here is what I
Yeah.
see. This is a separate category for this specific, this is how I read it. I'm open to, but for these students in Gloucester students for whom Gloucester was their home district, if they move after this date, they get the priority to remain in their school for the remainder of the school year. It doesn't say for the remainder of their school experience. Yeah.
Right, we could add a line at the end that said, students wanting to remain in Gloucester schools after the end of the school year would need to apply for school choice.
Yeah.
So what I'm wondering is, like, okay, does this effectively, allow them to stay for the remainder of the school year? Does this effectively turn them into a choice student and allow them to do what you said, graduate with their peers through the years?
If they reapply.
It's not intended to do that.
Right. I mean,
So
does anybody else think that's what it's saying there?
I don't read it that way, but if you feel, I mean,
We can always add.
we can always add the
sentence.
sentence. Yeah. So if, so we could say at the end of that, I'm just going to throw something out. Tell me what,
Mhm.
at the end of that school year, that student would need to
any subsequent school year, maybe? Or
at the end of that school year, that student
have
would
to
be
follow-
considered an out of district. No, that's
Or the student would need
We'd
to
have to
apply
read it,
for school choice for any subsequent
That's what
school
I
year.
like.
okay.
the
So
subsequent.
this
The student would have to apply.
to apply
I lost what I said.
Upon conclusion of,
To remain in Gloucester schools
for any for
for
subsequent
any
years,
subsequent school years.
the student would have to apply for
school
admission
choice- For school choice.
for school choice to remain in Gloucester public schools in subsequent
For
years.
any
Yeah.
subsequent years.
I think it does.
Okay.
That makes it a little bit wordy. I mean, it's pretty clear that it says will be given priority to remain in the Gloucester Public Schools for the remainder of the school year.
That's how I see it. Like, it feels clear to me.
well,
But it does kind of put it on the families to,
interpret, but
if they read this, they might, I don't see how they can assume that they're in forever, but we
Well,
can take
that's
care
why I
of
was
that.
asking about like other choice students. Are they affected?
It's very clear when you, I mean, we approve the school inter-district school choice policy every year. So that's not a given any year. Every year, the
Uh-huh.
school committee has to approve it. So
Yeah, okay, how about we say something more like, upon conclusion of said school year, they would have to follow the protocol for any choice students who would like to apply and
Well,
continue.
let's read the next one for a minute. Any student who is accepted for admission under the provisions of this policy is entitled to remain in the Gloucester Public Schools under the same terms and conditions as any other Gloucester Public School students until graduation from high school, except if there is a lack of funding for the program.
so then we do need to clarify. Then we absolutely do need to clarify. Thank you. Okay, so do we then, the student would have to apply to remain, we have to sort of identify which student. So in Gloucester Public Schools for subsequent years, would have to apply as
An out-of-district student. or-
as a school choice, would have to apply for school choice.
Yeah,
Yes.
So let's see. So then we have to change 7 or 8.
We also have 3 sevens there. I'm
Yeah,
not
I'm
sure why is
noticing.
that.
Well, we have 2
Just-
because we
just
crossed
those
one out.
The
So we
blue
have
one is to
2.
replace, but
Yeah.
when I looked down, I don't know
Yeah.
why that's also a
So
7.
that's a mistake. I know. That's a mistake.
Well, I just can't count.
7's very important.
It's a good number.
So we have to also change that second 7, which is now 8. I'm gonna just change the numbers.
And there's a 9
Right, we have to just change them all.
that becomes 10.
Right. We have to change that language too, I think, because it can't say any student anymore. I would say,
What do you mean we can't say?
well, what this 8 says is any student who is accepted for admission under the provisions of this policy.
Right.
So we just made a provision in this policy.
Right.
So, so maybe the place for that line is an 8. So it would say, you could say out of district students, I'm just playing with this here, who are accepted under the, okay. This, I don't know how we identify the students who are staying in their home school.
Say that again?
I'm just trying to think what you call this other category of student who is in Gloucester and then, so maybe we,
If it stays in 7, then it's clear that we're referring to them.
okay,
And I would say, this is a policy there is no safety concerns to.
We could shorten this up if we say like, because this is referring back to number 4. I'm looking at the blue text again. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud too. You're thinking out loud. But remain in the school year provided conditions of number 4 are followed, and I don't know.
so I think, can we do this? The student would have to apply as a school choice, would have to apply for school choice to remain in GPS
Yep.
for subsequent years.
it's almost exactly, well, I just
Yeah.
wrote,
Yeah,
at the bottom of 7, the new 7.
yeah,
These students will need to reapply as out-of-district school choice students to
How
attend
about
in
formally? How about
subsequent years.
formally?
Reapply.
How about
Reapply.
formally?
that's great.
formally
No, you
apply?
said reapply.
Right.
So
No,
that's
no,
great.
but they're not applying here. They're just
haven't
allowed to
applied, They're
remain.
just allowed to
So
stay.
formally.
They would have to
apply.
apply.
So have to apply, okay.
And
Yeah.
formally apply is not bad.
Yeah.
Or either.
Yeah, because they want to, all of a sudden.
I just
become a
say-
student.
I don't know if we need formally. The student would have to apply for school choice to remain in GPS for subsequent years.
That sounds great.
Simple.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yes.
it. So that's at the end of 7.
Turn this
8,
into a
does
word
8,
So you wrote that down?
No,
Does-
just
I did.
right.
I did.
Okay.
I did. Maria, can you hear us?
She's gone.
Okay, no, she's not good.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I have that language, to give you if you need it. And do we need to change 8 or we're good with 8?
We just have to change the numbers, I think.
Yeah, but other than the numbers.
Any student who is accepted for admission under the provisions of this policy.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's okay because we've cleared up 7 with
Okay.
that final sentence.
okay. So, and then we have to change the numbers clearly. And 9, just on the transportation issue, I just think we leave, I'm just playing devil, we want to be sure that it's understood that we're not, even for the people who are allowed in with new 7, we're still not providing transportation.
No.
Right. So we're just going to leave that and
That's
that's
all,
clear. Okay, I just want to. Okay, so let me read it. I'm going to read this whole thing again and let's see how we feel about it. Generally, applications for school choice must be submitted prior to the beginning of the school year for which the student is seeking admission. A late application may be accepted at the discretion of school administration, but applications from outside the Gloucester Public School District will not be accepted after the first term has ended. Gloucester Public School students moving out of the district after January 31st will be given priority to remain in their Gloucester Public Schools school, should we say district school, for the remainder of the school year, provided, consistent with this policy, there are no safety concerns, attendance issues, or a record of serious disciplinary problems. The student would have to apply for school choice to remain in Gloucester Public Schools for subsequent years.
Have to or need to? That's a picky thing.
Okay, need to. I'll change it to need to. Or would be required to.
Required, that's what I was looking.
Okay, would be required. Okay. So I'm going to read that last part. The student would be required to apply for school choice to remain in Gloucester Public Schools for subsequent years.
I like that.
For, yeah.
Yep.
I was just thinking subsequent year, so it sounded like every year after that they would.
I think that's, I don't think we need
Okay,
to.
all right.
I mean, they could be a senior, I mean, it could be a junior and it's 1 year. I mean, we don't have to
That's
specify
a-
the number of years. What?
It could be the subsequent year.
The subsequent year, yeah.
We could. But then that seems like it's only for 1 year.
Yeah, I know. it
So
does.
I would
think
leave
it's
it,
fine.
I would leave
But
it.
then the next one clears up that they get to say.
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
any
Okay,
student
yeah.
accepted,
Sure.
okay, so good, so then, so 8 stays the same.
Yep.
All right, so I think we should vote to bring this to the full committee. So Maria, we need a roll call vote, and does someone want to make a motion?
Yeah, make a motion that we amend the school choice policy, file JFBB, section 7, with regard to added language.
I think we just need to recommend the policy to the full committee as amended.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a good, boom. That's why you're here, Maria.
so you recommend
Recommend, what was it
to
again?
make a
Maria?
motion to
I
recommend?
got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and who's gonna second?
Second,
Okay.
that's me, Keith.
Yep,
The only other male voice here.
I got it.
You can see us.
Do we need to
right?
vote,
Yeah.
Maria?
Yes. Yeah, Laura,
Yes,
Bill,
Yes,
Yes.
great.
Wow, that was easy.
John.
Yeah.
We are recommending to the full committee.
Yeah, I thought dentists had it.
Thank you, Maria. All right, we're moving on. We are moving on to our next, which is discussion of our school handbook language regarding internet and Wi-Fi connected devices. And I will hand this over to Amy as well.
All right, so the 3 policies that were brought to the committee is the telephone services, file EGAF, use of electronic communication devices by students, file JICJ, and student responsibility use policy, file IJNDB. I just want to start by noting the last date that these policies have been approved. Telephone policy was approved in 2003. The other 2 policies, there's been no action on them since MASC has reviewed our policy handbook. I don't know when that happened, but it happened before I was in Gloucester, and that's at least 8 years. Okay, so.
Long time.
yep.
And before we go into the policies, I want to give you an update of cell phone guidelines that are in student handbooks. So at Gloucester High School, this is what's written in the student handbook. Cell phones and electronic devices, cell, mobile, and smartphones and other personal electronic devices are not allowed to be visible and or used at any time during the instructional day unless directed otherwise by a teacher or administrator for the instructional or other purposes. Phones used in a manner that violates this policy may be confiscated. Teachers may require that students either place phones in a personal bag, backpack, or in a designated safe location in the classroom throughout the class period. Students may use cell, mobile, smartphones during their scheduled lunch period. The recording of others, whether it be via audio, video, or phone, via cell phone, cameras, and/or other electronic media devices in classrooms is not allowed except by specific permission of the instructor for the instructional purposes. So this is not the policy, this is what is written in the high school handbook. So this is what students and parents sign off on every year.
They sign off on the handbook.
And the handbook,
Yeah,
yes. Okay. And then if we go further, I went too fast, sorry. At O'Malley, it is a longer policy, a handbook, and that is one of the things I handed out to you. It's cell phone and electronic devices. It looks like this. There's a picture of it there.
This is O'Malley.
It's much longer. I highlighted basically the three options on the blue side. So students are not allowed to possess cell phones or similar devices during the school day, and only with permission of the teacher at after-school activities. So at O'Malley, this is year 2, I believe, that they don't have cell phones out. They have 3 options. 1, they can keep their cell phones in their lockers for the day, and there are more details to it in what's in front of you. Option 2, they can, prior to arriving in the homeroom, they can drop their cell phones off at their last class of the day, so they'll end up with it. Or option 3, a student who is tardy to school or who will be dismissed early can secure his or her or their phone in the main office so that classes are not disrupted. So there are in what this handout on the left and in your hand, it talks about policy violations, first offense, second offense, and third offense. So that's what's in place at O'Malley. At the elementary schools, it's pretty simple. Electronics must be off and in students' bags during school hours. That's what it says. That's the current use of phones in schools according to handbooks. Actual use may or may not look different than that, depending on implementation of the expectations, right? And so I am proposing for next steps is that these 3 policies, the telephone services, the use of electronic communication devices by students, and students' responsible use, all kind of go in the same topic of cell phones in schools and devices in schools. I had a principal, when I reached out to get some information, noted that they might need or want some guidance on smartwatches. There are other devices, so the devices have gotten advanced of our policies.
Right.
Yeah, you might want to future-proof this stuff. So
Right,
chips in the brain, no, sorry.
Yeah. So these 3 policies are close with cell phones, devices, and usage. And I do want to note in one of the policies on page 4, this is the acceptable use policy. On page 4, it notes that, let's see, am I on the right one? But it says this acceptable use policy was developed with input from GPS administrators, teachers, students, and parents. I feel that if we are going to make changes to these, it would be important to get input from all of those stakeholders and maybe a few more. But I would like to get some input from stakeholders that this will be affecting. So I would love to create a focus group consisting of GPS administrators, teachers, students, and parents to review the current policies and as well as some model policies from NASC or surrounding districts that have some more current policies, and to make recommendations to us to be considered.
So the thing you showed us
earlier on what's in the high school handbook.
Yep.
They read that, then they read this and then sign it.
Yes.
Okay. I get it.
But this is GPS. So is this plus, as Bill's, I think that's your question, is this plus
Show me which one you showed.
so that we've got
Yes.
this? So this plus the O'Malley one you showed us,
Oh.
that's,
This is also, this I believe was developed because of COVID, and this is probably more recent, the online services and the expectations, and this comes out of O'Malley. I'm sorry, I thought you were looking at the acceptable use.
I get you.
so this comes out of O'Malley?
And then share this.
So it's not this?
She
one?
shared both.
Okay, so, but it says GPS Chromebook, so this is just
So
a,
if the high school might be using it as well, but this came out of, for
okay,
COVID when we went digital.
so that's not the policy.
This
I
is not the
see,
policy,
I
these are
see.
guidelines.
Okay, so these are the
Because if you see
guidelines.
part 3, it talks about remote and hybrid online learning.
Okay,
This is a,
okay,
out
so
of
this
COVID.
is O'Malley and from COVID,
This
okay.
first page, GPS online learning
This is-
services Chromebook, that's O'Malley?
O'Malley and GHS.
So this is a COVID response?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, some of these might be worth looking at. It's more recent as far as technology is concerned, but not necessarily, we're not doing hybrid learning anymore. Online or that kind of
Okay, but that's not a policy.
thing. No,
So
it's
like,
not a policy,
so
it's
I'm
a
not-
resource. right.
okay. So what I see as the policy is the Gloucester Public Schools Student Responsible Use Policy, file IJNDB, which
Yeah.
seems to cover grades 6 through 12. And my understanding is that that is the one, when we looked at it, Amy, that said it had been worked
This is the one.
on through a group. I don't see it right now, but I know that this is the one that had been
Right,
acceptable. Oh, it's the signature page.
yeah, it's on the signature page.
Was
And-
developed with input. I
Yeah,
see.
And
Okay.
there are 2 different, there's a grades 2 through 5, and then there's a grade 6 through 12.
I don't know if that made it here, but
Let's see, this is 2 through 5.
yeah, I'm not seeing it, but
Okay.
Student responsible.
Right, this is 2 through 5, and they're very similar,
Correct.
yeah, that's not showing up on mine
and
somehow.
6 through 12.
Okay, so, so a couple of questions. So from my perspective, I think it would be great to get a focus group
Mhm.
to dig into IJNDB and come up with a policy to replace this one or to update this one, given the pervasiveness of what a lot of other policies call portable electronic devices.
Mhm.
They're
Yes.
vague. That's how they cover
Mhm.
anything
The umbrella
portable.
of-
Yep.
right.
So that's the language I've seen is portable electronic devices.
Yeah.
That may become too limiting at some point, like you say, a chip in the brain, but that's where we are today.
Well, you're portable because you're a mobile being.
Right, exactly. So,
I don't want to be
so
able.
my, so for me, that's one policy, but we do have these 2 others.
Mhm.
So maybe we just take this one to start and then we'll move on.
Okay,
I think it makes, speaking for myself, I think it makes a lot of sense to convene a focus group and to dig into what would be an appropriate policy now.
Mhm.
And to do that so that that policy would be linked and reflected in the handbook so that everybody's, right, so that everybody's understanding that what we have in our policy, including disciplinary measures, would be consistent with the handbook.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's kind of convoluted. I don't want to say it's convoluted, but it is a little bit more kind of all over the map a little bit here. So I'd like to kind of put everything in buckets and silos and say, hey, this is the policy at O'Malley, this is the policy at high school, this is what you're signing off on, and kind of go from there. But it's obvious from your initial comment of we hadn't reviewed it since 2003 that
Right.
it needs some sort of focus group that can kind of bring it up to speed, I would think, so.
Right. So I think we probably need to recommend to the full committee the formation. We need to recommend the formation of a focus group to deal with policy IJNDB.
And we can have the other two on deck.
And we'll have the other two on deck. But
So we
so why don't we start with that? Maria, would we need to come up with the composition right now, or can we just start with just recommending to the committee that we approve the formation of a focus group?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay,
Do we recommend who's on the focus group, or
I think we're gonna,
do that at the,
Consisting of GPS administrators, teachers, students, and parents.
what it says here?
Yeah.
there was also a question of if we want a school committee member on there.
That would be fine too.
I'm really cognizant of people's time, so I wanna,
So the focus group would not be creating the policy, they would be recommending what to bring back to this group,
back to programs.
right? So the three of
Okay.
you would have input once the focus group has made recommendations.
Okay, so then, so why don't we make a motion?
I
Of
can
the
just
group.
do
Go ahead.
this language right here. Recommend to the full school committee that we create a focus group consisting of blah, blah, blah,
Right.
to review current policy
I-
and model policies and make recommendations.
Right, well, this is specifically for policy IJNDB.
Okay, I'll put that in there.
Right,
So not the other two that's on the screen. Maria.
Yep.
not, yeah. Okay, so should one of us say that?
You can just say so moved.
So moved. Somebody has to second.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Laura,
Yes,
Bill,
yes.
and Keith.
Yes.
okay, so that's the second thing we're gonna recommend to the full committee.
So this
So, so the other two policies, I just want to sort of introduce these a little bit and figure out how we move forward with those two. Now, these two, I spoke to Dorothy Presser at MA, or I wrote with her, and they have not updated these in a long time. So there's no updated telephone services, it's called EGAF, or use of electronic communication devices by students, JICJ. However, other districts do have some updated versions of these. And what I propose we do is, I've handed out a few of these. Now, the first question is, do we need two policies here? These policies are basically covering the same thing at this point. So that's my number one question. They're both about cell phones. They're both about electronic communication devices.
I wish that there was one policy to rule them all, if you know what I mean.
Well, we're getting there, maybe.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
hope
like
so.
that, in my ideal world, simpler is the better.
Right.
Like,
Right, but because we have these policies now, we have to figure out, we could consolidate them,
Yeah.
we could figure that out. In looking at other districts' policies, very few had EGAF listed anymore, or the few that were online with MASC, they did have JICJ, which is called, in our use of electronic communication devices by students. So let me just bring up a couple of issues, and then what I propose is we look at other districts. We can do that here, or we could do that separately and then send our feedback. But this feels to me, Amy, like something that, given how sort of integral it's become to the district, would then go back to the administration. To sort of look at and sort of give some suggestions on how best we do this. And that may be a superintendent question, that may be talking to other districts, I'm not sure.
So if we look at the purpose and the arrangements and the consequences for
Mhm.
electronic communication devices, it seems like some of that might be able to be, or is already duplicated in an acceptable use policy.
Okay. Okay,
Or it could be if it's not, if part of it is not.
right. This one, interestingly, doesn't distinguish between grade levels,
Mhm.
right? So that's already challenging. Yeah, it is sort of kludgy because everything is overlapping here.
Right, and I want to make sure one policy is not going against the other policy.
Right.
Want to make sure they at least complement each other.
So let me just mention a couple things. I have two other EGAFs. And the things that, one is from Amesbury and one is from East Longmeadow. It's a very different policy. They seem to have come from a different model. Maybe this was another MASC policy that they're looking at because it has an employee section, a student section, and then one has a public meeting section. So it's very different. Here we're focusing on students. The thing I want to point out, and we don't have this in ours, is that phones will be confiscated if they are misused. I'm wondering about that. And these even have, and schools will not be responsible after 2 days if the phones, for the phones.
Sorry.
So among the consequences for violations of these policies
Right.
that we don't have is that violation of this policy means that your phone can be taken away.
Indefinitely?
No,
Will be, no, students, parents, they give how much time?
That sounds like theft.
No, but it's a violation of a policy on school grounds,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
You want to have, or you cannot bring your phone
right.
to school. It's a question. I see this in two of the, one of them reads, East Longmeadow reads, will not be liable for any property not picked up by parents within 48 hours of
So the
notification.
students aren't allowed to leave leave the campus with the phone that was confiscated.
They probably have different disciplinary actions, but yeah, depends on how.
I don't understand why they wouldn't be able to leave with their property if they're not at the school anymore.
As a legal question, I don't have an
It's
answer.
their property. Like, you're disrupting school, school's over, with your phone. But, maybe there's a disciplinary, like you say, you can't bring it tomorrow. You can't bring it tomorrow.
It says Amesbury Public Schools will not be liable for any property not picked up within 2 school days.
Doesn't say
It
whom.
doesn't say, we're gonna hold your phone for two
Yeah.
school days.
Yeah,
It
and-
just says,
Doesn't say whom.
if you don't pick it up, we're not responsible.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying, I'm just saying, this is in other policies.
Mhm.
I mean, we're going to need legal,
and
Yeah, it's somebody's property.
I
Yeah,
would-
make sure this is legal.
I would want to stay with the student focus on this. If we go into employee focus.
Yes,
like
no,
these two, we're going to
student.
talk about
no,
collective
student,
bargaining and things that
no.
I don't think we're opening.
Yeah,
no, we're only on
Okay.
students here. So
Thank you.
I thought I was making that clear, sorry.
Thank you.
You made it.
Students, only students.
Making it crystal clear.
Yes, to anyone watching, we are only dealing with students. So that's just one thing I wanted to put out there. So that was one major difference with our policy for EGAF. Now, again, EGAF feels like it may not be necessary at all. This is our, it's just about phones, and we're well beyond the world of phones. But that's just one thing I wanted to point out about
Right.
EGAF.
Well,
This-
there are still landlines at the school, and not all students will have a cell phone.
But this is not, the landlines at the school are the school property, and
I think there should still be a policy if a student needs to use a phone, right?
Yeah, they can be
Landline.
used for, students will be given access to phones to call parents or guardians upon
Or
request.
you're just saying we don't need to mess with this? Is that what you're saying?
well, I'm saying that maybe cell phones no longer, I feel like we're dealing with cell phones in these other categories
Yeah,
now.
it's almost like that could be taken off the,
Right, so maybe this
Oh,
is
yeah, I see
just,
what you're saying, yeah, okay.
maybe
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
just for
maybe cell
land.
phones don't need to be
Yeah.
in this EGAF.
Well, and the cell phones does not, in our current policy, does not specify whether it is student or staff. It just says non-educational use of cell phones during the school day for staff and students will be restricted to areas designated
Right.
by the building principal. In all other areas, the cell phones will be turned off.
Right, so we,
Phone ringers set to vibrate or silenced. When the administrator has declared an emergency, students and staff are allowed to use their cell phones.
so that contradicts our
yeah,
other policies.
Everything else, yes.
right. It's almost like we want to, outside of the landlines, we want to get rid of that. Or, eventually meld that into the other policy. somehow.
Students are,
I don't like silence or vibrate, I want powered down or powered off.
but remember, this is talking to about students and staff, what we currently have.
Okay.
We're going to be careful what we're deciding here.
So I think that this is going to get handled elsewhere. I think what we have are different contradictions in all these policies because they're so old and they no longer cover everything. Because this doesn't even reflect what's in the O'Malley policy now that you don't have your phone.
Right, because this was written in 2003.
Right.
Right.
So, so we're giving you this feedback to bring to the administration. I think I would say maybe we take cell phones out of this altogether. And do we still need a landline? I mean, do we actually need a
I
landline
think we do.
policy?
There's still them.
No, of course.
Particularly,
Okay,
yes.
so then
But can the landline be folded into the?
well, I don't think so.
No, probably not. No, because it's electronic.
Right. Okay, so that's, I mean, EGAF, that's useful, actually. Okay,
So do you want me to take to administration the language from East Long Meadow and Amesbury and get their feedback?
I think it's part of a bigger conversation, but yes.
That might be a good starting point.
But if we are taking cell phones out, then it becomes irrelevant, right?
Yep.
That's the confusion for me here. It's funny because East Long Meadow has both of the policies and you can see how they are also in like.
So JICJ plus.
Right, it has both.
Yeah.
And then, they're all just like sort of stepping on each other.
Yeah.
The policies are.
The policies are.
So the legacy of EGAF was about landlines prior to.
I
so that
suspect-
was just cell phones.
I guess so, and then they added it.
Is it possible, and I don't know this, for cell phones, you could make some sort of disclaimer that cell phones will be used in accordance to the acceptable use policy, JICJ.
Yeah, sounds great.
Well, acceptable use isn't JICJ.
Or what,
It's-
what
right.
IJNDB.
Yeah, I think that's a good use of just refer it back and don't have a contradiction.
Arguing with itself.
Right. So that seems like a good idea to bring to the for you administrators to think about.
Yeah, if we put up our EGAF on the website, it would be a heck of a lot, it would be this, that's all
Right.
we would have.
Right.
That's-
Right. So, I
Our
mean,
policies are very simple.
some of them
Short and
are.
sweet.
And so, that would be with the acceptable use policy. Okay, so that's something to go, and what I'm hoping, Amy, is that you guys talk this through, make it make sense also with the principals and what's actually happening. And then we come back. And it may be that you come back and say, we don't need any of this. I don't know.
Yeah.
So JICJ, Westport is the most recent, 2020. They also sort of are talking about earbuds and headphones and, right, like I think, it's more recent. So they're looking at a broader range of the devices.
Does it say boom boxes from 1980s?
Walkman.
Yeah.
So, and interestingly to me, and again, in Westport, I don't know if you guys all have that. They do two things that I thought were interesting. One is they say any allowable use of cell phones and electronic devices must not violate existing school policies, including but not limited to policies relating to bullying and intimidating and harassing, academic integrity, safety protocols, etc. Again, I just think it is interesting,
Mhm.
given how cell phones are used or can be used.
That covers a lot. And just say, don't violate school policy with your electronic device.
And then they and others, as we look at them, and again, this doesn't specify the level, so that's a little tricky.
Level of what?
The grade level.
Oh, okay.
But they also include provision around cell phone and electronic device searches. So being able to look at someone's device.
I was reading recently, we don't have the right to search someone's.
I'm not,
device.
we would have to go to an attorney.
I saw this online today where you're not even allowed to look at the lock screen if there's a message that pops up.
Right, no, I am not an
Yeah.
attorney. I would not advocate that we do this. I think it is interesting that other districts do.
They might be violating the law, yeah.
If it's in the
It's
policy
search.
that it can be
Yeah.
searched.
Right.
Makes it, I believe it does, so we can check it.
Is it like searching a backpack?
So,
That's getting into an area that we're not,
We're not, That's a
it's not
legal-
covered in the policy.
it's a legal thing, but it's in their policy, and I just wanted to point it out as just in the sense that people are thinking about these things.
Yeah.
People are trying to figure out how to deal with this, sort of this world.
It seems risky.
I'm not proposing it.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
pointing it out.
I don't think we should mimic that.
Mimic what?
I'm
That
not-
language at all, yeah.
I'm not proposing we do.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's in some policies.
Hmm.
Now, the other two I wanted to point out, North Adams has a, more permissive, less punitive, sort of, they go through grades pre-K through 6, 7 through 12. And they're, writing this to basically say, like, what I like about this one, it says possession and use of personal electronic devices at school or on school property is a privilege. Now, I don't know anymore if that's a privilege, not a right. But I'm pointing some of these things out to see how things are evolving.
Well,
Because I think, and Amy, I'd love to know what you think about this. I think the issue is that everyone has devices, or many people have devices, and they can be disruptive, and they can be dangerous, and they can be they can have negative consequences. And when those things happen on school grounds, and that's a school has jurisdiction. So it's a lot of gray area here.
Yep.
And the purpose for me is just to say the counterpoint to that is Bridgewater Raynham, which has no devices, period. It's like 2
you can't even
lines.
bring them to school?
They're not
How
permitted
does
to
they
use
calm
them.
down? Use them.
All
Not
such, they cannot use them, all such devices, they must be powered down without permission. They all must remain out of public view and disciplined for use.
Yeah.
Which
I like
may
yeah.
include confiscation
That's
of
the word I like,
devices.
powered down.
Well, they aren't. Anyway, I'm just saying there's different ways people are handling this. That's all.
Bridgewater Raynham, short but sweet.
Right.
huh?
Just no, you may not use them.
I think there should be allowances, honestly. Like,
That's why the administration has to weigh in, because this is just, I feel like people have done the work. We can look at the work people have done. We're not these other districts. It's not 2020 even anymore.
it would be nice to know when these were formed, these like
Some of them are
Bridgewater.
dates.
Some of them are
Bridgewater's
dates.
is not.
Yeah.
Right.
That would be interesting to know when that was like enacted.
Right, but East Long Meadow was 2012, and
Right.
2017 is
North Adams,
Ludlow.
2018.
Yeah, I mean, they're not, some of them, I mean, none of them are as old as ours.
Mhm.
Well,
So,
those are two extremes right there.
right,
Bridgewater and North Adams.
right, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
What, sorry, say again?
North Adams and Bridgewater are the two extremes.
Right.
North Adams says, if used appropriately and respectfully,
Right,
personal electronic devices may be used quietly in
Right.
hallways and in the cafeteria.
right, so they're allowing a lot
Right.
in Bridgewater, Raynham, and
Basically saying,
No.
no, period, no. So I raised these, Amy, and you have all these and more. There's one or two that reflects what we have, which must have been the 2002 version. But I raise these because I feel like there's a lot of stuff in them that we haven't included.
Yeah.
That may be totally not appropriate for us, or they may be appropriate for us, or some version of them may be. But it seems to me that this is something the administration has to look at, that we're not going to, and we have to get lawyers also to
Sign off.
sign off.
Okay.
So I would love to hand JIC further, sort of revisions of JICJ and EGAF over to you and to the administration, if that feels appropriate to you, to then come back to this committee with some updates and some suggestions.
Do you want it at the same time as the focus group or conjunction or?
We can see how the timing works.
yeah,
I do, now the last thing I just want to be careful about is social media.
Mhm.
So social media needs to be part of whatever our policy is. In the sense that like, it's been,
Do we have a social media?
I don't
policy?
believe, I don't believe so.
It's gonna be, there's gonna be a lot of free speech issues with that, right?
There's bullying and harassment that,
Social media is in both of those.
right. So there's bullying and harassment, and that's a major use in schools, and personal privacy. So I don't know, we need an attorney,
Yeah.
but a person in a school building, right, on school property, if the policy is that you cannot take pictures or videos of people without their permission, that's.
Which is already in.
Which is already
our
in,
policies.
right, so there's already some, and then there's a next stage of posting. And I think that's already in our policy to some extent. But I think that's one question. And another thing to bring up, and we may need a grant, is our policy was written, the original one, not the COVID one. It appears to have been written when the only network was the school network.
You mean no cell network?
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
So the school network can be controlled as far as have some firewalls to prevent certain websites or things to come through, or all kinds of ransomware, also just inappropriate content, like those kind of things that can happen. But if a student has a cell phone
They're
in their
unrestricted
hand,
depending on, yeah.
our network has no
Yeah,
oversight of it
I
at
totally
all.
get that, yeah.
Yeah.
So that, when Kathy and I went over these policies, that was just a big question. Because a lot of the regulation is around how you use the Gloucester Public School internet.
Because that's what we have the ability to regulate.
Right.
right.
So that's the question. How do we regulate what people are using and sharing from our buildings on things that are not our network?
Right.
And is there a place for that in the acceptable use policy?
Right, or any other.
There's gonna be some, situations where kids are looking up things that are not age appropriate. Right? Is that what you're getting to? Or
What I'm particularly thinking about personally is not that. I'm thinking about kids taking a video and posting it of someone
that's-
without their permission.
We've had situations
Right.
where that's happened.
Right, and that's
Things
just,
have happened and
right.
It's been posted.
right, and that's, no, so that's a
How do we
problem.
handle that?
But
How do
like
we
you
handle it?
mentioning lack of firewalls, I'm thinking like, what are the restrictions? I mean, like, of
So
course, there's age restrictions
There
on a lot of
are
these things, but.
restrictions on our network. on a,
Yeah.
on a
No, I get that. I think we're
student's
okay
cell
with
phone.
that. It sounds like we're okay with
On a
that.
student's cell phone,
Yeah.
we are not able to restrict that. And in the world we live in right now, they could, never
Yeah.
mind take a video and post, they could live stream.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
we are in an instant
Right.
information world.
Right.
And can we necessarily stop it if it's on their phone? Maybe not. Can we have a policy or procedures in place so that there could be a disciplinary action? There could be clear expectations. There could be that.
Yeah.
That's where
I
we have
wonder, what
control.
was it, North Adams that said just no?
No,
like
it
maybe
was- it was
Bridgewater.
Bridgewater.
Like just no? Maybe this handles everything. No.
But, so we can't necessarily, we can't shut down other
Right.
students, the other people's phones, right? We
Right.
cannot
Unless we
do
just
that.
say no.
But we can make the expectations clear. We can make the consequences clear.
Yeah.
And if you are in violation of a policy that we have vetted, you have vetted, not me,
Yeah.
then this is what happens.
This could be ramifications for that.
Right. So,
So what we can control is a policy. We can't.
right. So that's my
change
point.
the
We,
world.
and I'd love to know what you both think. It felt to me that when this was referred to our committee, these are the questions.
Yeah.
These are the questions we have
Yeah.
to ask and figure out how to answer in our policy.
To me, that was the most disheartening thing, is I heard of an incident, and I was like, wow, we gotta look at the policy. We got kids posting stuff, live streaming stuff, that's.
And there is some language in our current
Right.
policy where there can be consequences. If it's not
Exactly. Yeah.
acceptable.
Yeah.
And maybe what's in our current policy is enough and it just what needs to be more enforced.
Enforced, yeah.
Or maybe the language needs to be strengthened or adjusted to be brought to more, modern technological times. I don't know,
Yeah.
Right.
but we can take a look at it.
And there were policies that also, it's not just video, it's also audio, right? People's
Hmm.
phones.
Right,
Um,
didn't even think of that.
right. No, all of it is
Right.
possible. So I think that's our task.
Well,
We're heading.
what are the, there's recording laws, of course, already for the state, right?
So I'm not an attorney, but in the school building,
Yeah.
there are certain rules that are different, I think, than other.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, does state law supersede what we have or what we will have? Like, say, it's like a two-party consent state, I think, for recording. You know what I mean?
So that's a question for the attorney.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I
you're
know it is
saying
a
if two
two-party
people
consent.
agree that they can be recorded, then it's okay?
Well, that's what the state says.
It is, but inside a school building, if
Right.
it's
No,
not
what I'm saying
appropriate
is
to be
like
recording
they
at
would
all,
be
you're breaking
violating,
that
they would already be violating state law if they recorded somebody without the permission.
Right, but we're here to talk about the policy of it. The law is another step,
Right.
and that's something that could be pursued. But what we can control or affect some change is in the policies.
Right.
Right.
of the
we're a
schools.
policymaking body, not a law enforcement body.
Uh-huh.
So,
That's well said.
that's my
Yeah.
understanding is we are advised by the law, by our attorney.
Mhm.
We make policies in accordance with the law, of the Commonwealth. And we make, policies that are appropriate for education in our district. So that's,
And the other layer is the fact that they're all minors, they're students, and it's, they're.
If you go by the guidelines, all of the apps are not applicable for anybody under 13.
So there's not a problem.
Right.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy.
TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat,
Hmm.
Facebook.
I know, my
You're supposed
son,
to be
I mean, I don't want to
13.
bring it all about myself, but she's like, my son, goes, can I download this game? I was like, it says 14 plus, but my friends play it. Stop.
this may be totally separate, but I know that there is a move to sort of teach kids younger and younger about what is happening when they go online and how their information is being used and that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting as we move forward, just as a district, if we start to implement some of that,
yeah.
because
I think it's a good idea.
this is the world that they are entering,
Yeah, it's like not just safety on the public streets, it's safety on the public web.
So,
Okay, so the plan is for them to, for Amy to take it back to the administration?
So focus group for IJ and DB and back to administration for GAF and JICJ, correct?
right,
And I don't know if you did a motion for the last two. Do you need
to bring back to, I don't,
Administration.
I'm
I
not
don't
sure
know
if
if you
I
need
need
to.
a motion for that. Maria, do we need a motion to send these other policies back?
Your administration?
Yeah,
No, I don't think so. I think you can just tell Amy or
Yeah.
ask Amy to come back with recommendations at the next meeting.
yeah,
Got it.
that's what that's the goal.
Request
Okay,
politely.
great. So, and Amy, do you feel like we've given you enough? I mean, it does feel sort of kludgy. There's so many things that overlap here, but do you feel like we've been clear enough?
Yep.
With what we need? And then we'll be in touch. You'll let me know.
Yeah, the focus group will take longer
Yep.
because it's getting a large
Yeah.
group. The other two, I need to get this on the agenda of a leadership meeting. Those are pretty tight, but I will try to squeeze it in.
We've been waiting since 2003, so.
So you can wait a little bit
No
longer?
rush, no rush.
Okay. I won't go another 20 years.
It's good though. And if we can make a policy that really covers us,
Yeah.
no matter what the next
So
device
this-
is.
This idea of forming a focus group, a common thing for like school handbooks.
For acceptable use policies, because that's how that was created to start with.
Mhm.
It does have to follow all the guidelines for the policies, for
Mhm.
MASC and all of that. But to have it really reflect some of the expectations that we have in our schools, the ones I presented, like at O'Malley in the high school, very simple, just put it in your backpack at the elementary schools. But it should be reflective of the expectations in the school day. And there are times when students need phones. Like
Yeah.
I was in a chemistry class a couple months ago, and they took their phones out and did some calculations on it because that's for their calculator.
Because they don't have a calculator.
Right, and that's also part of these policies is when the instructor
And if the
says,
instructor says, take it out and do that, then that's not like that is an
Acceptable.
acceptable
Yeah.
use of technology.
right,
What about the Luddite kids, the ones that don't even have, like, I'm not, it's neither here nor there, but like, some kids might not want a cell phone. I wonder, they're probably, going forward, there might be kids.
There were probably calculators available, but
Yeah, yeah.
nobody asked for them.
Yeah.
Right, right. I would consider being on the focus group, but let's
wait,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's figure out.
Well, let's bring it to the full committee
Yeah.
and see what people want to do, because if, let's just,
Yeah, the full committee might say, I mean, I think it's a good idea to have a school committee member on the focus group.
yeah, I think we bring it to the committee and we talk about what the composition would be, or ask them. We didn't come,
Yeah, somebody that might not be on there, although it does say GPS staff, is I would want to make sure IT was on there. Grant or
Yes.
Brandon.
Yeah.
Good call.
right, okay.
Concur.
All right, so we'll bring that. Was our motion included the people who were on it, Maria?
Yes.
Okay, good. And do we have to add, I don't think we said IT.
But we did say GPS.
GPS staff.
Yeah,
Okay,
GPS staff, we are staff.
GPS staff. Okay, great. So we don't have to redo that. Okay, great. So is there anything else anyone wants to bring up about this?
I think that's a lot for one night.
I think we can go to 10. Come on.
So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Laura,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Keith.
Yes. I might go play volleyball.
Maria, thank you so
Thank
very
you
much.
very
This
much,
meeting is
Maria.
My
adjourned.
kids might still be able to
Thank
do
you
this.
for all this work, everybody.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank
Good night.
you. Good night.
Good night.